I'm back in Launceston in Tasmania to shoot some more training videos with Professor Roger Taylor, Dr. Richard Lilly and Dr. Peter Pollard. Those videos will form part of an online training component that Richard's developing for his National Exploration Undercover School, Nexus. All four of us have spent a significant portion of our careers in the world of consulting geology. That world necessarily involves quite a lot of international air travel, and that travel doesn't always go according to plan. So after the shooting was wrapped up, we sat around and shared a few of our worst travel nightmares. And I left the cameras rolling.
What was that, man? It's 3 weeks and no one spoke English. And I was so pleased to get out because there was only one plane a week or something, 2 planes a week. So we drove for hours through the mud road jungles and got to this airport. And the airport's a strong word, it was a mud strip and a tin shed, you know. It was unofficial there. I put my ticket down and he shook his head and gave it back to me. Well, the plane's right there, I could see it, you know, just coming to land. So I thought, well, that wasn't very good, so I drew an aeroplane and pointed at that one. He gave it back to me. It wasn't a very good drawing, so I did a better one. Had the same result. I was getting a bit anxious for me. Next thing I knew, this guy had run off with my suitcase. He's running down the bloody runway. Well, first I thought he was going to take it to the airport plane for me, and I realised he was actually running away. I thought this bastard's stealing my case. I'm running after him, and he eventually drops it. At which point I turn around and the plane just takes off. It's gone. I get back to this tin shed, there's nobody there, lugging my suitcase. I sat in the corner and smoked my pipe and thought about life in general. And
what about the Queen?
the Queen, that's right, think of England, be brave, you know. About an hour later, this truck rolls up with the bloke who'd stole my suitcase, leaning out the window very tentatively and pushing someone else towards me who spoke English. It wasn't my plane. It was last week's. It was late. Mine hadn't arrived yet. Wouldn't be another 2 days.
Peru and Bolivia once, and we were back in La Paz, and our flight was at something stupid like 4 a.m. or something out of Peru. So we just basically, rather than getting up at silly o'clock, we just go to the airport. We got a taxi from the place we were staying, which wasn't a high-end place at all, but it wasn't too dodgy. So we got in this we asked the owner to call us a cab, and this fella turned up, and we piled in the car with this guy. And we roughly knew where the airport was, and he went off in a completely different direction. And before we knew it, we were going through, the stereotypical favela kind of edge of city, cardboard houses, kind of just dogs everywhere, people with guns. It was just dodgy as, and we were just like, oh no, we're gonna die. My mate and I were like in the back seat, like looking at each other, like, oh shit, what do we do? Do we just make a run for it and abandon the bags, or what do we do? And just at the point when we were sort of, I don't know what we were gonna do, he pulls out and he's right opposite the airport. Because instead of going on the main roads, he'd just gone the wiggle through the back streets. And he looked so pleased with himself. The whole way he'd been not like doing these ones and looking really shifty. And then we got there and he had a big beaming smile on his face.
Coming back into the path, there's a long queue, And the driver gets out and goes up one side, see what's going on. Down the other side come the usual, 15-year-olds with M16s sort of pointing at everybody. And they got to me, and the only thing I understood was passport, waving me passport. No, out you go. And they marched me up and locked me and threw me in a cell thing at the top. Meantime, the driver comes back and I'm not there. And then, he was a fixer, so okay, it was somehow fixed. But it transpired they had news that someone from the CIA was going to come in to assassinate the president. As far as they're concerned, they'd got him. It was me.
My trip to Argentina, I flew from Laos, so I went via Bangkok and then London and then down the other side. But company had booked me business class, so I was hardly complaining, which all went well until I got to London, Heathrow, which I subsequently learned is called Death Row.
Heathrow Airport.
And I had 3.5 hours or something to make the connection, and I thought, oh, that's surely going to go well. And then I got to the transfer counter, and they said, oh, you're cutting it a bit fine. And I went, well, I've got 2 hours left, And they went, oh. And, I had to wait for ages to get the bus to the other terminal and whatever else, because it's 2 in the morning and whatever. And when I got there with still an hour to spare, they said, oh, no, sorry, we've given your seat away to a standby passenger. And I went, well, don't you dudes, check to see that someone's in the airport before you actually give away their seat, particularly a business class seat? Anyway, I said, no. They said, you're screwed, and the only way you're getting on the plane if there's a no-show between now and takeoff time, which is an hour, and, knowing what I know now, presumably everyone was already well and truly there. But despite my trepidation, 5 minutes before they closed the door to the aeroplane, they said, oh, look, there's been a no-show and you can go. Only 2 wrinkles with that. One is your bags won't go because we've already offloaded them. And 2, it's in economy class.
Oh.
And 3, which they didn't mention, you'll be sitting next to the biggest, fattest guy who we would ever give a single seat to on an aeroplane. So for the next 18 hours, you're going to be sitting like this next to the window, next to a hippopotamus in an aeroplane seat.
I had one once where I was, they used to have that direct flight from Sydney to Buenos Aires.
Yeah.
And so I was booked on that. And I went down to Sydney and they said, oh, it's been cancelled. They got headwinds or something. So we put you on this other flight via Los Angeles. And I, didn't know any better at the time. And I said, oh, great. Off we went. So when I got to Los Angeles, I was promptly arrested for not having a visa. And I was, escorted around the airport for a while, and then I was escorted onto the flight to Miami, and where I was arrested again. Escorted around and put on this flight to Buenos Aires. I thought, oh, well, survived that. Got to Buenos Aires, and the flight, I was due to go Buenos Aires, Sao Paulo, and that had left already. So I was arrested again for not having a visa for Argentina. And so I sat with these cops for hours, and then eventually they just said, oh, go on, you can go. I went off to this terminal and they booked me on some other flight to Sao Paulo in first class for some reason. And so I was in there with all these kids who'd been skiing, broken legs and things like that. Anyway, I did arrive. It was the most horrendous trip.
And the other one was I wanted to go see this tin mine. I'd saved me money and gone to this conference, and it was a trip to the tin mine. When I got there, it was cancelled. It was my own money. I could barely afford to, stay in the hotel. I was speaking to a bunch of Americans, and they said, oh, you're Roger Taylor. We're going to this tin mine. You can, we'd love to join you. Oh, great. Well, I said, we'll be there on, whatever it is, 2 weeks' time. Give me a date, and we'll see you there. But of course, seeing me there wasn't that easy when you haven't got money. So I actually went by bus, local bus, and, back with the chickens and all the rest of it. Finally got there, 2-day trip. Got a taxi, not a taxi, but it took me within about, half a mile of the gates. He wasn't going any further, just dropped me. Same story, I get to the gates, there's all this people with guns. There's this hobo coming up the road, with long hair. So they marched me off to the manager, and I said, oh, I'm with the American delegation. He said, well, this isn't an American delegation, what are you talking about? Take him away. So they locked me up into a dungeon down in cells underneath the somewhere or other. And I thought, that's very good, Roger. No one knows you're here. Half of them don't speak any English, and he was sitting in a cell feeling hungry. And the American delegation hadn't been informed they were going to turn up. They turned up a day late. Apparently they were having a meal in the evening. They said, what happened to that bloke? They went, oh, we got him. Oh dear. All to see a tin mine.